Just answering questions with WebTech. Post-traumatic syndrome. In the year 2019, September, activities were done during September involving the Chinese government and various projects. China is a communist country. They are not capitalist. They don't do the things that would be done in any country that does capitalism because they don't have to. On the 16th of September, 2019, Hubei Gohan Tendering Consulting Company Limited was responsible for submitting and processing a 4 billion yen or $608 million budget set aside as an open bid for an environmental air disinfection system for a biosafety level 3 lab doing animal virus testing in China. Now, in the United States, we do lowest bidder, but you end up with cost overruns because they always lie about how much it costs. There's no reason to assume that that would be the standard in China, or that it isn't an impossible thing for it to do, but you should assume that they do things somewhat differently. The budget posted by the individual saying this is the maximum you're allowed to go to is $608 million. A, they assume people are going to overrun that to much more money, which is an American presumption, maybe even British and whatever. Or B, it's such a heavy bureaucracy that they're basically daring you to do that so they can ban you from ever getting a contract forever unless you grease certain palms. Yes, there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of bribes spreading around, but this is China. It's not done exactly the same way. And that's very expensive, but then again, this is a level 3 lab that does the following. The air conditioning system, this is the air disinfection system ostensibly, is for making it to where your petri dishes on this table or your experiments on this table don't contaminate each other between dishes, which means you have to have a local system insulating and isolating them. Between the dishes, there has to be ones over each one. That's why they put a little cap over it. And you don't want something 4 tables away or 4 rooms away or from a different floor contaminating it. You also don't want the human beings bringing in bacteria and viruses like they always do, from even a simple head cold, being able to taint your experiments. And you don't want these experiments to hurt the humans. Now, most of, if not all of the diseases in the room are using animal model testing and animal virus testing that are not supposed to be cross-contaminatable, but you don't assume that. If you always do every experiment as if you assume they're going to get contaminated and try to prevent it, it reduces the amount of contamination but doesn't completely eliminate it. On its worst day, this location would be medically safer and medically cleaner than maybe a hospital ward doing brain surgery, potentially, or not. And this is China. They plan when they wipe their ass 5 years ahead of time. So I can guarantee you, if somebody was given the go-ahead in September 2019 to post a posting saying, you know, everybody needs to bid now, you got, I think it was listed as 2 or 3 weeks to do a bid. That they were, you know, this was planned ahead. This isn't most likely done because of some recent occurrence. And odds are you'd have to demand that they do it ahead of schedule. Now, at the same month, X number of days earlier, 4 days, there was also a security service procurement project for $1.3 million. There's a bunch of boring things on the website. Now, this one that we're looking at for this particular bio level 3 testing area is the Central Air Conditioning Reconstruction Project. That means replacing it. Wuhan Institute of Virology, Chinese Academy of Sciences. Now, in the United States, when we have something like this happening, it isn't necessarily done through central committee or whatever, but it can be. We can do almost the same thing. And in China, they don't have to do it through central committee, blah, blah, blah. This one's done through an LLC, at least as far as the bidding process. And it's done under supervision of a bunch of bureaucrats looking down your frickin' back all damn day. Now, there's a Republican House report and websites citing it, also websites independently coming to a similar conclusion, making the following claims about this information. The Wuhan lab air circulation system was defective before the first cases of the disease we're dealing with came out. That's a conclusion that doesn't make any sense based on the fact that they did not mention that this particular thing at $600 million, $608 million American if you're looking at it, it's 4 billion yuan, or won, or yen, or yen or yang. There's no reason to assume that it was defective at that point, because that by itself that doesn't make it. What's your evidence? But also the other thing is, both contract announcements, according to various websites' interpretation of the Republican House report, and maybe even said in it, you'd have to read it, says that these contract announcements, actually there were open bid requests, not contract announcements, it's not a contract announcement, was scrubbed from the Chinese Ministry of Finance website. This is the Chinese Ministry of Finance website. These are the only things being referenced, and they're just open bids. They're not contracts, they're open bid requests. They're telling you to bid. They also weren't scrubbed. They are visible. I just uploaded a video explaining how much of a pain in the ass it is to even look at them, much less archive them, much less, oh my God, archiving a translated copy of it. And I had to use 2 different methods to do the archiving just to see if I could get it to work. And then do that again through another archive. Because Chinese government's websites and the entire country's networking system is antagonistic as hell against archiving or any other activity that they just don't like. They arbitrarily flag and ban shit all the time. In fact, 2 or 3 times while I was doing it. Actually, about a dozen times. But let's not discuss that. I'm going to be in therapy for that. Next, the Republican House report isn't based on them claiming that it was scrubbed because of ignorance. It may have just been because that's what it looked like. It behaves that way when you're doing a dynamic test. I did one today. A lot. But it wasn't scrubbed. It's still there. The information's not identical to the original posting in 2019, but some of the archives are. And it is almost the same thing. It's been updated because it's more than 2019 now. Saying it was scrubbed is most likely based on them not being able to do a decent archive of it. Again, China is aggressive against people using their website outside of China. Sometimes. The Republican House report asserting that the air conditioning or air filtration system was defective isn't backed up by anything here in that. So this $6.8 million budget that is not supposed to be met, it's supposed to be a lot lower than that. Maybe, I think, isn't indicative of some catastrophe. It's just that they were doing the work, and that was the maximum budget. Also, I have to point out this was a very partisan report. It's not a bipartisan report. It's a Republican House report. It's listed as literally off the GOP Foreign Affairs House.gov. It's not, your government at work. It's the GOP's version of it. Okay, they have their own partisan version of the site. That's how we do it. It's an adversarial system. That doesn't mean it has to be honest. And more importantly, that doesn't mean they were being dishonest. It just means the damn website was attacking the person who's poor schmuck who was trying to archive it. This is the first time I've seen a GOP or anybody else not only use an archive, but use Archive Today, because Archive Today overtly is antagonistic to Chinese servers trying to keep them out. That's the only reason I was able to do it. But that also means it's a target. And I had to trick it by using Google Cache, which was, again, attacked multiple times. All right? Okay, here we go. So the contract announcements weren't scrubbed, and the assertion that the air filtering system was defective is a conclusion that doesn't have any merit unless they produce independent data that's useful. And here we go. And with the quality of the report, I'm going to skip that. If you want to provide a good link, we're good. Then they ask, quote unquote, why would China's build to replace an air conditioning system in a communist country with bureaucracy aplenty and bribes all over the place be 3 times the cost of building a new lab from the ground up in the United States? By the way, they didn't mention that one is not including the cost of the air filtering system. depending on which version of this you're reading. In the United States, we're a capitalist country where we deliberately undercut everybody and go for lowest bidder. The reason it's different is because these are two different countries with two different philosophies how to handle things and finance them, and also plan ahead. Now, the archive for one of them that ends in 1776.5 is an archive.vn SQNI8, I think it is. You'll just cut and paste it. Next, the one that ends in 9007.12.htm is archive.vn MXILM, maximum. Those two archives are the ones I was able to make after multiple tries that failed to get a Google translated, Google cached version of the page to work and be able to then archive it without it breaking it. So you can read it in plain English and not be lied to by literally not partisan politics, but an entire government of China going out of their way to prevent you from reading their financing data. Also included in this will be GOP foreignaffairs.house.gov's link, National Review's link, Sargent Report, Washington Post, and for some reason I included Yahoo.com, Wuhan Lab Air Circulation Systems. Now, someone asked me some questions about this, and this is the second video I've made on this. The first one was an explanation how much of a pain in the ass it is to get the archive, much less translated archive, much less a cached archive, because that's the only way to do it. This one's explaining what the rationale behind that is. Now, I take each component apart. Well, why don't you address the entire report? No, because they got it wrong about it being scrubbed. Because they came to a conclusion exclusively based on it that doesn't match the data. And it ignores their own reports, the House Committee, Republican House Committee, complaining about how people finance things in China and how the government does this shit. I'm quoting them. This is a previous report I read that they did, where they're complaining that, yeah, they always claim that they're going to do this budget, but they do it less. Why can't we do it here? Because they were complaining about America overruns on our projects being bid low and then over budget later. When they announce a budget, they'd like it stuck to. Well, you'd have to be a totalitarian regime that literally shoots contractors in front of their employees to keep the prices down. Because that's a thing in China. And I'm also directly quoting a dissenting opinion in the Republican Party there. I figured, why not just quote the Republicans, because they actually got it right. So to conclude, this is not an indication the equipment was defective at the time, partisan opinion aside. Next, the amount of money may have actually been $608 million, but that probably is just a pie-in-the-sky number they're daring them to stay under. And that's actually for more than just this one system. It's actually for a lot of systems. And saying that these were scrubbed was a mistake on their part, or ignorance, but I prefer to say a mistake. Because, again, the Chinese website servers attack you for trying to make a backup copy. A lot. Here we go. Person asks, in the first half of 2019, a rather large payment was issued for air conditioning treatment systems for the Wuhan lab, totaling over $600 million. Yes. This is not a brand new building, merely origin for the virus, blah, 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 yada, yada. And then the person asks these questions. Now, this is going on and on and on. This is a long request. So I only handled this one thing because this seems to be the crux of the arguments on all the websites talking about it. And then he brings up, we had Fauci in previous years literally telling us Trump's presidency will be hit with pandemic. It's a whole stack of assertions or questions. Do I handle them all? What is the main domino that tears out all of this stuff? I don't know. I haven't read all of it. It took me an hour to find out what the hell was going on with this one website just to get 2 stinking archives to work. This gets tiring, so I'm going to kind of retire for the day about this. But no, this is not the House report, and these pages are not indications of any kind of weird skullduggery going on. They're just not. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.